All right, radio listeners, today we have a return guest and Larry Schweikart. Larry has written so many wonderful books. We've talked to him before about his book, A Patriot's History of the United States and the 48 Liberal Lies About American History. He has many more, but right now we're here to talk about a brand new book entitled A Patriot's History of the Modern World. And Larry Schweikart, we'd like to welcome you back to the Conscience of Kansas radio program.
Thanks. Always great to be on the Conscience of Kansas, and I think you'll find this kind of ironic and interesting. I just got word today that Patriot's History Reader, which was the book that came out last year, it's a documents collection, has just been, we just sold rights for it to be translated. The first time I've had one of the Patriots books translated into, of all things, Georgian. So those Georgians are now getting with the Patriots History program.
Well, it's about time. It's about time.
It's about time.
Well, these books have been so wonderful. I tell you what, our Tea Party Patriots, I'm the master of ceremonies for 14 counties now here in the state of Kansas. They tout your books all the time through my different emailers. Are saying, have you heard of this book? Have you heard of that book? And yours are in there so often. Tell folks a little bit about this brand new book.
Well, this book began, of course, many years ago. After Patriots History of the United States, I started thinking, we really need a kind of world history, because a lot of homeschoolers would come up and say, do you have anything for the world or for European history? I said, no, not yet, but we'll do that sometime. And so with David Doherty, a businessman and computer specialist and writer, historian that I know, we started putting this together. And when we turned it in, it was one volume that went all the way from 1898 to 2012. And the publisher said, that's just going to be too big, too much, so we split it in two. This is the first of those two volumes. It goes from 1898 to 1945. And I would say the highlight of the book comes early, and it's where we define the four pillars of American exceptionalism, something that I have not seen anyone else ever do. And then we follow through the first half of the 20th century how other countries, messed up or failed to achieve their goals because they didn't apply some of these pillars of exceptionalism, especially after the Versailles Treaty. And so those pillars, real quickly, are that the United States comes from a Christian religious tradition that's predominantly Protestant. Second, we have common law, something that no other country in the world right now has, in which the law is given to the people by God, and they have their rulers set up structures that enforce and implement that law. It's not given from the top down. Third, we have private property rights with titles and deeds, very important, because without those paper protections, you not only don't have proof that you own stuff, but you can't leverage it.
Yeah.
And then lastly, we have a free market economy, which, of course, many places around have today. But it's the combination of those four pillars that makes us an exceptional country.
Well, it's interesting to have those laid out there. And I see that a lot. There needs to be outlets where young people, old people of all ages can go and get information historically that is not so liberally biased in its slant that you just don't know where it's coming from. Is that kind of what you see out there in the academia on these issues?
Sure, and one of the goals in writing this was to provide a conservative, if you want to use that term, a conservative perspective to modern world history. How would you look at things if you're not a flaming liberal?
Yeah.
And that's how we present things here. For example, the Versailles Treaty after World War I, why does it fail? Why does it give us Mussolini and Hitler and the Spanish Civil War and continue to allow the Soviets to do what they do? Why is it such a grand failure when it starts with all these lofty promises of democracy and national self-determination? Well, it's because the Europeans, when Wilson said these words, he's an American progressive. And while he knows what they mean, he doesn't like what they mean, and he's trying to change it. When the Europeans hear those words, democracy, representation, all that stuff, they mean something totally different from it, because they came from a monarchical background that had a great deal of socialism in it in the late 1800s. So it's one thing to use these terms and to put them in paper treaties and contracts and things like that, but it's another thing to know what you're doing with the terms when you use them.
Well, yeah, they have a powerful effect. And ladies and gentlemen, we're speaking with Larry Schweikart, New York Times best-selling author, just a wonderful historian. We're talking about his new book, A Patriot's History of the Modern World. We have this book linked up at IbbitsonUSA.com to make it easy for folks to buy it. You can find it at Amazon.com and all the major book outlets. I'm always harping about American history and that we need to get things accurate in how we look at American history over the last maybe 10 years. Woodrow Wilson has, because of guys like you, has been looked at a little bit differently, FDR maybe a little bit differently than what I was taught in school. But it's interesting with this book is you get a view beyond just America and probably putting America in perspective by looking at the world itself.
Right, and I think that in some cases, unfortunately, American progressives, when they were in control or when they were on the rise, had us looking a great deal like Europe. I think of the 1920s, for example, and you have the rise of these public health and public medicine programs in Germany and Europe, other parts of Europe and Britain, and in America. And a large part of what this ends up becoming is eugenics. How can we control or get rid of those who have, and one of the quotes I use in the book, who have life unworthy of life? How can we control or eliminate those people? And there's a fascinating comment by an American named Davenport, who's heavily involved in the eugenics program, about the American Eugenics Record Office that was set up in New York, and the woman who was running it, named Harriman, she was the daughter of Edward H. Harriman. And he says, I have no doubt that the fire you started today will someday become a conflagration. And when you think of that in terms of the ultimate eugenics, i.e. the Holocaust, his choice of words was really prophetic, that the eugenics programs that were spawned in the 20s that would soon be accelerated by the Nazis would result in the deaths of millions.
Yeah, amazing bit of history. And of course, that eugenics and that eugenics kind of mentality is seen through our history in folks like Planned Parenthood and others that, really kind of embraced that idea of getting rid of the undesirables, whether it was mentally or those of the minority race and so forth. It just seems like to me, Larry, you can't really have a grasp on the present and what we're trying to accomplish, what should be accomplished for the future, if you don't have a grasp of the past. And there's so many people running around today that just have no idea of our history and of world history.
Well, and, I keep going back to the 20s because that's quite pivotal in a lot of ways. But the failed structures that are set up after Versailles end up, ironically, not causing people to gripe and complain against communism and socialism and programs like that, ideologies such as that were so monstrous. They vent themselves against the flawed democracies that were set up after World War II. Again, because the Europeans didn't have the same concept of democracy that we did. So where do they go? Well, they start putting in people like Hitler, Mussolini, and then you have the Bushido Code in Japan that's put in place at this time. We call that the totalitarian moment. And basically the whole world, it's astounding how within about a 15-year period, almost all of the democracies in Europe disappear. I mean, they just go away.
Man. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been speaking with Larry Schweikart. This is a book I think folks ought to pick up, and especially all the heavy readers out there have been following Larry's work, because this is, again, going and looking at history from a conservative perspective, just kind of giving you the facts without all that liberal spin, but from a different direction. It's entitled A Patriot's History of the Modern World. And Larry, as always, you're knocking them out of the park. I tell you what, I can't remember your story. Did you used to be in the music player in the music band? Is that,
Yeah. Yeah, we opened for Steppenwolf and the James Gang. In fact, I had this film. By the way, I'll put in a plug for my film too.
Do it.
Rockin' the Wall is out now. It's on PBS of all things. People say, "Oh, PBS is so liberal." Well, we have a great movie called Rockin' the Wall that is out on PBS, and if people will go to our website, rockinthewall.com, you can see time schedules. And hey, Paul, it's in all the big markets. It's in L.A., Chicago, Detroit in prime time. And so some of my music is in that movie. And when we held the L.A. premiere about 2 weeks ago, it was funny because I had a number of my old bandmates come out and join me. So it was like a old musicians reunion.
Well, it's interesting how life goes in certain directions as we go through life. I could be reading you on the copy of Rolling Stone. I'm so much more happy that we're able to read the books and the works that you've done that are really opening people's eyes on history. It's a wonderful service, and folks, you need to check out this new book. We're going to put both those links up so people can find all that stuff. Very interesting. And Larry Schweikart, with the new book, A Patriot's History of the Modern World, we want to thank you for coming back in, spending some time with the folks here on the Conscience of Kansas radio program.
Absolutely, Paul. And let me throw out one more website before I go, and that's patriotshistoryusa.com. Has all the books, all the links. Thanks very much.
Oh, as always, you're welcome. And we look forward to having you back on with your next book, because I know you're going to keep writing.
Volume 2 from 1946 to the present. And you notice the subtitle of this one is From America's Exceptional Ascent to the Atomic Bomb. And we think, I'm hoping that the subtitle of the next one will be From the Cold War to Obama's Unelection.
That's a happy thought. That's going to give me double mint pleasure today. And Larry, as always, thank you so much for coming on the show. We'll be talking to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Paul.
All righty. Bye-bye.